In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, we will discuss some of the top shooters that will be in the 2023 NBA Draft. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of NBA Draft Junkies. And my co-host for today is Mr. Mavs Draft, Richard Stayman. I just left the Mavs game. It's pretty late here. The Mavs could definitely use some shooting. Bullock had a good game tonight, so he looked like he's, being consistent when he kind of finds his shooting stroke in late January and February. But, as a guy that watches a lot of Mavs games, I feel like they get so many open looks, so many wide open looks. And they are, they're a good shooting team, but they're streaky. There's some games where they just look unbelievable, and there's some games they just cannot make an open look. Now, the Mavericks don't have a first-round pick, so I'm sure the majority of the guys in this episode won't be available unless a trade is made, but there may be some guys that could be available in the second round. All right, so, Richard, who is your top shooter in this 2023 NBA draft?
I saw somebody today on Wednesday say, that the gap is closing. I don't really think it is. I think it's still Grady Dick. I think the way he comes off of screens, he's just so flexible, just as a shooter, versatile, I should say. I think it's still him. At 6'8", being able to come around screens, dribble handoffs incredibly efficiently. I think it's him. And he's shooting right now 45% from three, which is ridiculous on 6 attempts a game, 80% from the line. I think it's safely him until somebody really just knocks those numbers out the park, which it's really hard to do.
So where do you have Grady on your board? Do you have him like mid-lottery, lottery, or just outside the lottery?
Yeah, I got him close to the end of the lottery. I have a policy where I'm like, I've learned if somebody's the best shooter in the class, they're going to be a top, at minimum, 14 player from the draft. Just the best shooter, if they translate, it's almost always that way. So for me, I have him at number 12 to be specific, but anywhere in that mid to late lottery, I think is pretty acceptable.
So there's this guy by the name of Brandon Miller who's actually shooting a higher percentage from three than Grady Dick. He's shooting 46% from three on a healthy volume of attempts. I think it's like 7 a game or something like that. In your opinion, why is Dick the better shooter than Brandon Miller?
I just think, I do think Miller, for what it's worth, he's my number 2. And I do think that when you look at just what they're going to be asked to do in the NBA, I think Grady Dick's going to have a higher percentage at a more difficult role, and he's going to be elite at it. I think Brandon Miller has an unfortunate disadvantage with an advantage because he's more likely to be a primary, right? And because of that, he's going to take tougher shots. The percentages won't be as good, which it's an unfair advantage to him. I think they're the 1 and 2, but if you're just talking about how will those numbers translate, I think Grady Dick has a better chance of doing so.
I'm going with Brandon Miller. I'm driving the Brandon Miller bandwagon all year. Last year was Banchero. This year is Brandon Miller. He's doing it. He's the focal point on a top 5 team. And wow, Dick has been great. It's definitely not a knock on him, but their offense, is centered around Jalen Wilson, who's having a great year. And he's having such a great year that I don't even know if it's really helped his draft stock, which is weird because he's been so productive. Because the biggest concern for him is like, can he shoot? All right, so we got Grady Dick and we got Brandon Miller. And if it were me, I'd flip-flop those two. Number 3 is where it can get into, it's pretty much open from there. I think those two have separated themselves. But who's number 3 on your list of the top shooters?
Yeah, I had a lot of choices I could go from here. I think for me, the numbers don't The sample size is just not there to actually say whether or not he is, but given the high school film we've seen, also the free throw percentage and things like that, I'm going to say Nick Smith is going to have an argument for being up in this spot. I'm not super confident in him being like third, but I do think he has a chance to be in this race. I think his shooting touch is phenomenal. I think he's best as an off-ball shooter, which benefits him, but at 6'5", that can't be his number one scoring trait. That's a whole different argument, but I really do think he's one of the top 5 shooters in this class. At a minimum, I would say like 5 or 6. So for me, I'm just going to go ahead and roll it and say number 3. Who knows when he'll be back, if he's back, and what those numbers look like. But I think the percentages from 3 at 30% right now really undersells him.
Yeah, I had talked to some scouts at the Mavs game tonight, and we talked about Nick Smith, and the rumor is that he is coming back. Like the scouts that I talked to did expect him to finish out the season. I know there's a lot of rumblings that he's going to shut it down, that he's done. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the rumors that I heard today. All right, who's number 4? Actually, before we get to number 4, Nick Smith is shooting. Before we get to number 4, Nick Smith is shooting 30% from 3. So there's somebody in the comments or somebody listening is going to say, is Richard crazy? So can you just elaborate a little bit more? Why? Because in my opinion, he was rusty. He played, if you look at the stats, I think it says he played 5 games, but he really played 3. There was a game where he played he played like 7 minutes. And then he had the 3 games where he played, without a minutes restriction. And then there was a game where he got hurt again. So he really played 3 games, rusty, and the 30% shooting is not indicative. But can you elaborate from your personal view of why you aren't paying attention to the 30%?
Yeah, one is small sample size. Like, I get it. But at the same time, for me, it's just that shooting touch is very real. I think the free throw percentage, there was already a decent sample size in what we saw for at least the per game. There was over 3 a game. And I think the form is great. Every single shot is a clean follow through. He doesn't change his form to contest anything like that, like in a negative way. I think it's a very scalable shot. I get it, the 30%. Like, I probably should have gone with the guy who I'm going to list next first, but I do think that if he's hitting his ceiling, like, he's a top 3 shooter in this class. So it's kind of an upside play. Again, I think the touch is absolutely there. I was talking to Global Scouting earlier today, and we were talking about it, how like he's got just such perfect touch, and that stuff matters. Like, I think he's got great touch. That's why free throw percentage is a strong indicator, because touch sometimes matters more than form and things like that. So again, upside play.
Yeah, I think the best display of his touch is on his floater, and like he has amazing like touch around the rim, like soft touch finishes. And then over time, I think because his touch is so good, he's going to develop into a really good NBA 3-point shooter. It's going to take time because his college season has been kind of taken away from him in a sense, and then it's an adjustment for to get used to the NBA 3-point line. All right, so we've covered Grady Dick, Brandon Miller, and Nick Smith. Who is number 4?
Yeah, so I've got Jett Howard. This is probably who I should have gone with if the percentages are any indicator. But Jett Howard's just a ridiculous shooter. 7 attempts a game, 40%, from 3, 78% from the free throw line. Like, the math checks out. All the percentages are there. I think for him, it just comes down to how's his shot selection going to be. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's Juwan's kid, right?
Yeah.
So, he's had unlimited freedom.
Yeah. 2 totally different games. And I had talked to somebody today about him, and I was asking them like their thought on him and where they had him on their board. This was the scout that I respect, and so he had him pretty high. And my question to him was, why doesn't he rebound? He has the size. He has, what is he, like 220, something like that? 215, 6'8", has the size, averages less than 3 rebounds per game. And the scout had mentioned that he thinks he's one of these guys that is kind of spoiled in a sense. He used the word diva, and he was like, he's a guy that if he just says like, I'm a good shooter. I'm not going to rebound. I'm not going to mix it up in the paint. I don't want to do it. And he was like, that could be something to look out for in his game. But he was high on him, and he talked about the shooting and the size. He thought it was something that's going to easily translate to the NBA. All right, next person, number 5.
Yeah, this part, it gets tough. And a lot of these guys, I'm noticing the overlap at the top of the draft. Like, I want to dig deeper because there are a few guys in the second round that I think are some of the best shooters in the class that just haven't gotten a ton of love. But there's multiple guys here, and I'm honestly, these next 3 are completely interchangeable. And again, I probably should have put Nick Smith lower, but also completely upside. I'm going to go with your guy. I'm going to go with Keyonte George as the next one. I know the percentages. I actually don't know what they are off the top of my head. I'm looking them up right now. 36%, 81% from the line. Not anything crazy, but you look at the quality of those shots. He's shooting over contests almost every single time. He's shooting from, I would consider deep NBA range even. Like, it's at least half a foot behind the 3-point line of where the NBA line is. I mean, the Texas Tech game from Tuesday night is probably the best example of it. I'm enamored with that shot, and we've seen it in person. Like, his form is, I think it's the best form I've ever seen from anybody his age in the time I've been scouting. So I'm all about it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we'll talk about Keyonte a little bit more when we return, but I want to talk to you. Yes, you, the listener, who is looking to eat healthy to start the new year, but you're looking for something delicious, but you don't want all the fat and the calories. Well, you have to try a Built Bar. And we know it's the beginning of the year. And if you want to eat healthier, then you have to try the Built Bar. I said it again just to make sure you heard me. It's healthy and it's actually tasty. And what makes them so good is that they are covered with 100% real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. And another thing that makes them great is that not only are they healthy, but they're tasty and only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. Another cool thing is before you always had to order them on built.com. And now you do not have to get online or get on your phone, go to built.com and order. You can find them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. So if you head to the nearest Walmart today, if you walk into the pharmacy section, you can find Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs. And if there's a Sam's Club nearby, you can go and grab a 13-bar box with flavors like brownie batter and churro. You will thank me later. But if you still want to go the old school way, you want to wait, go to built.com. All right, once again, you are listening to the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. This is your host, Rafael Barlowe, with my co-host, Richard Stayman. We are just covering some of the top shooters in the 2023 NBA draft. Now, I know somebody's going to chime in and say, oh, there's this guy at such and such school that is shooting 56% from 3. Not every great shooter is going to be an NBA prospect, as weird as that may sound with the league valuing shooting so much. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. All right, so we left talking about Keyonte George, and Keyonte shooting a very respectable 36% from 3. It wasn't always at 36. I mean, there were times where through, maybe December, I want to say it was probably in the low 30s. He had a big game that definitely improved his percentage, but he passes the eye test for me. And one of my, I don't know, I guess differences, like as far as me like growing as an evaluator from years past and this year, is I'm just trusting my gut and I'm going off the eye test. I'm still going to use numbers, but it's not going to be the determining factor. Keyonte looks the part. The shot is beautiful, like you said. He can get to his spots. He can pull up. I think he's a much better shooter than the numbers indicate. And you never know. By the end of the year, if he's at 38% from 3, that wouldn't surprise me. And if he's around that mark, or even 37, that's pretty much what I was expecting coming into the year, because he is a tough shot taker and a tough shot maker. So I didn't necessarily think it was going to be in like the mid 40s or anything like that. But if he's at 37, 38% or even higher, then that's I mean, that's about at expectations. What do you think his role is going to be in the NBA?
Yeah, I don't know. What makes it hard for me, this is the hardest part about evaluating Keyonte George for me, is he's what, 6'3" and maybe 6'4". Like either way, that's not an ideal size for what his role is. I don't think he's a true point guard. He can play make and create, but he's not a point guard. And if you want him to be this off-ball guard at 6'4", that value is very low. Like I have a hard time with that. Now, however, almost everything he's asked to do, he does at a high level, I think. Like, again, even being that off guard, he is very good at that. He can pass. I want to emphasize that again. Just because he can pass doesn't make him a point guard, and just because he's not a point guard doesn't mean he can't pass. But I just like his ability to he's like a jack of all trades. He defends, he passes, he shoots. And that's a very quick summary. But the issue for me is just like I don't think he's going to be a good finisher, at least early in the NBA, because he's so not explosive going to the rim. Makes it really hard for me to profile what he does as his niche role outside of shooting.
I think he's going to be fine. I think if you didn't know anything about him or his prior reputation coming into the season, you just watched him play now, you'd say, okay, this kid can possibly be a elite ball handler. But the perception coming into the year, which I think he's done an excellent job of trying to change the narrative, was he was a bucket getter, not necessarily a passer, wasn't a defender. Last I heard, he was leading the team in charges. He's averaging 3.5 assists per game, and he's not playing as their primary. I think those numbers are pretty good. And he could even develop into like your Ant Simons type guard, right? I mean, Ant is explosive. And here's the thing about this class, and I had this conversation with a few people. Because there's the Thompson twins and Scoot Henderson, guys that are pretty athletic aren't getting the credit for being athletic because of this class, right? I've seen Keyonte, I've seen him jump over somebody 6 feet and dunk. Of course, it wasn't in a game, but I've seen like the explosive. I've seen the athleticism. I think he's obviously going to have to get stronger. And then like with the finishing in college basketball is probably more physical than the NBA. There's not a lot of spacing. And I think once you factor in the spacing and guys getting stronger, then I think he'll be fine. It's kind of like it's like the buzzword on draft Twitter this year is this guy can't finish. This guy's not a good finisher. And even like the guys that are really good athletes, I mean, if you look at Scoots finishing around the rim, they're not great. If you look at the Thompson twins, I think last I looked, Asar was shooting like 43% on layups. Not great. So I think the finishing is going to come with spacing and when guys get stronger. But we're talking about shooting. All right. Number 6. Who is number 6 on your list?
Yeah, so I'm going to go. This is somebody who I probably should have listed earlier, but Bryce Sensabaugh out of Ohio State. He is having a ridiculous start to the year shooting. I mean, at this point, it's not even started. He's just having a ridiculous season. 4.5 attempts per game, 46% from three, 82% from line. Honestly, he's a multiple level score like shooter. I think he's 3-level scorer, but you know, he can shoot off the bounce off mid range. And what's so special with him is that, like, yes, he has that spot up shot and everything, but if you fall for it, if you're a defender and you're committing hard to that jump shot, he's going to up fake one dribble, step into the 3-point line and rain a mid range. Like, he's just as good at that. I'm big on him. Again, probably should have listed him earlier, but all these, I think, really after Grady Dick and Brandon Miller, is all almost interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean, he's shooting 46%. He's even shooting a higher percentage from three than Grady Dick and the guys you mentioned before. One of the concerns about him, not necessarily a concern, but I've had people say, like, man, imagine how good he's going to be once he sheds some pounds. They're saying that they love his build, but they wonder if he got down 5 to 10 pounds, could that like do even more wonders for his game? A guy that we weren't talking about coming into the season. And I've seen some boards that has him as a lottery pick. So Ohio State's going to do it again, even though they're struggling this year. Like overall, team wise, they're not really good. All right, so that's 6. Who's number 7?
Man, it's that's pretty much it for I feel like the top guys. There's somebody who I haven't mentioned yet who I have to double check his numbers, but I'm like 95% sure it's good. And yeah, it still adds up. There's somebody who I don't know how nationally this guy still isn't like talked about as much. He's like sprinkled in, so he's definitely given love, but people don't do more than just say, "Oh yeah, this guy's good." Next guy, and that's Taylor Hendricks at UCF, and like I probably just answered my own issue there. Like he plays at UCF. It's not exactly a school known for basketball and shining like we know it for the national championship stuff and football.
Scott
But
Frost.
yeah,
I'm from
yeah,
Nebraska.
exactly. Like I mean, he's shooting 39% from three, 81% from the line. I think the form's great. He can shoot at multiple angles. He can shoot over guys, and he's 6'9". So like that combination is really lethal. And I think he sticks. And also on top of that, like of why he sticks, he does so many other things on both ends of the floor. Really good rebounder, just plays defense. I really like him.
Here's a guy that I mean, maybe he's not on your list, or maybe you just haven't mentioned him yet. But Maxwell Lewis, 41% from three, shooting 50% from the floor. Is Maxwell going to crack your top 10? We're getting close to. Okay. Where did you have him at?
What's up?
Where did you have him?
He was going to be probably like two more. There's one guy I had in front of him who I really
Okay.
wanted to list, but
I was just wondering, man. You were scaring me because I got Maxwell Lewis in my lottery. Yeah, I
good.
think he's going to be
We're
really, really good.
we're gonna have to talk about him in depth when he comes up.
All right. So, all right. Sorry to throw your order off. Who's next on your list?
No, I was gonna say just one more. This guy, I think, is somebody who I don't know if he gets drafted, and I know the percentages are lower, but just given his role, I think kind of explains it. I really liked him last year. I think he could be a great spot up shooter. And I'm probably reaching slightly here, but Tyler Burden out of Richmond, I really like him. He's only shooting 33% from three this year. So another one of these guys who the percentages aren't there, but he went from second option to first option. So he's playing less off ball. He's taking more off the dribble threes, which isn't his game, but he's still hitting those catch and shoot threes. I really like his game and think he's somebody who he has a weird dip. I think that's honestly his biggest, obstacle is he goes all the way down and then goes all the way back up. And in a league where closeouts are long and hard, like where they're just more intense, I think it's going to be tough for him to at times, unless he gets rid of that dip to shoot over defenders. But if he does, I think he's going to be one of the best shooters from this class.
Yeah, and actually today when I talked to some scouts at the games, and I was asking guys like, all right, who is your guy? Who is your guy that you're higher on than the consensus? And one scout was like Tyler Burton. And I mentioned to him, I think it was the episode that I did with Leif, but I mentioned to the scout, I was like, if you listen to a Locked On Big Board podcast, like we talked about Tyler Burton, and I was like, I want to see him go to Denver. He's such a great cutter. And going to Denver, I mean, I haven't thought about like where he could fit in and get some minutes at immediately. But if you're a cutter like he is and a shooter, I mean, you want to play with Jokic. He's going to find you cutting and he's going to get you open looks. When we return, we'll finish out the rest of Richard's top shooters. But BetOnline is what I want to talk to you about because BetOnline is your number one source for betting, info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, which is over. But next year is going to be exciting for college football, but BetOnline is going to have it. You got the basketball. They got it all at BetOnline. And if you like sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. It is the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting info. So head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more. That's because BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, last segment. And Richard, who is next on your list of the top shooters?
Let's dive into Maxwell Lewis. Actually, I heard he prefers Max Lewis. So let's dive into Max Lewis, who he's shooting a great percentage as well. 41% from three last year, 36%. Free throw percentage in both years over 80%, which is I think the way I look at it is 75 is like should be your bare minimum. 80 is a well above average. And if you hit like 85 plus, you're probably elite in that regards. So he's in that mix. Like right now he's at 83. He's pretty close. I really like his offense. I think I have a theory where like I've done most of the math. Like if you look at the last like 13 years, the number one drafted sophomore. So if you look at the best sophomore in the class, has like a 70 to 75% success rate. There's some Derek Williams is mixed in there, but generally, if you're the first sophomore taken, you have a great career. I mean, Benedict Matherin's the most recent example of this. I'm curious what you think. Is he the best sophomore in this draft? Because I thought for a while it was our guy, Turk Quavion Smith, but I'm not certain it's not Max.
I have both in the lottery. I mean,
Same.
if you ask me tomorrow, my answer may be different than it is today.
Right.
But right now, I'm just literally just going strictly off my gut. I don't care about anybody else's big board mock drafts, what other people are saying. I'm going strictly off my gut. And Maxwell Lewis is. I had him 14th on my last board. I think he's going into the top 10. And Jalen Williams' success this year with the Thunder is making me even more of a believer in Maxwell Lewis. But yeah, I mean, like you said, and I've heard you mention it before about the success rate of the first sophomore taken. I mean, history is history, and I mean, I like him. I think that he's going to be a steal. It's unfortunate that he's playing at a mid-major in the West Coast, and people are missing his games. You aren't really having a chance to watch him live. I mean, the Gonzaga game wasn't even on TV. So I'm like, all right, if the Gonzaga game isn't on TV and I can't find it anywhere and there's a gazillion channels showing college basketball, then you probably won't see him live again until Summer League. But yeah, I like him a lot. All right, who's next?
So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go into the international pool here. This is somebody who he's a 7-footer playing over. I think it's in Lithuania. You know this better than me, so I might have just completely botched that. But actually, it's in Southern Europe. It's not in Lithuania. But that's Tristan Vuk. I think it's Vukcevic. I don't know exactly how to say it.
He's in Serbia.
It's Serbia, so I apologize. Yep. Got the complete opposite side of Europe. But he's shooting 39% from three. In Europe, he's shooting 56% overall this year across EuroLeague and like just other leagues in Europe. The other league he's in, I mean, just a national play or whatever.
Domestic league.
Domestic, thank you. That's the word. I could not think of it to save my life. Mm-hmm. Still just 19 for a couple more months. Really impressed with him. The shot is so quick. He shoots. It doesn't make sense how he shoots past closeouts so effortlessly, but he does it. And the numbers are there. So I really like him.
I haven't watched him yet this year. I was definitely high on him. Was it last year or 2 years ago? Maybe it was 2 years ago. Then I went to watch him play live last year. He was playing for Real Madrid and he got in like spot minutes. So I could really only evaluate him during warmups. And then he ended up switching to Partizan, which is now in the EuroLeague. I've always liked him. He's someone that, he's athletic. He has a little toughness to his game. He's a little stiff. He's kind of upright. Maybe like a poor man's Jabari Smith, as far as just like they're athletic, but they're upright, not much of a shot creator, not really shifty. But I do think that he could be somebody that could really surprise people. He's just not getting talked about enough. It isn't me, but has there ever been a guy like when it's like your third cycle on them, you kind of start to wonder. It's like they get passed up in a sense by these newer guys because you've watched them. Like this is like my third draft evaluating him, and he's kind of been forgotten. Like I haven't watched any of his film this year. I mean, I've seen like the highlights, and I have some friends that play for Partizan, but I definitely need to reintroduce myself to his film because he's playing more than he played last year. But he was hard for me to evaluate before because I couldn't find any film from him on national teams. And I had just had this conversation with Bogdanovich tonight after the game about how, for European prospects, there's no college. So once you turn like 18 and you're really good in your age group, then the next step is just like pro, right? There's no college. So you can kind of get lost. And so for him, the last 2 years, a year and a half, it was kind of hard to evaluate him. And then he wasn't playing on like, the under 19 or under 20 teams because his nationality situation is really, really weird. Like I think his mom is Greek. I think his dad is Serbian, but he was born in Italy. So he has like his choice of countries that he could possibly represent. I think he's settled on one. I'm not for sure which one it is, but he's somebody that I think he can end up being really, really good. I just have to reintroduce myself to his film. But that was a good call there. Who's next on your list?
Appreciate it. So I'm stuck between two on the last spot. So I'm just gonna do both. I think I'll go with both of these guys are seniors. They're longevity guys. I'm gonna go with Marcus Sasser at Houston. I think all the numbers add up. I mean, last year he granted only 12 games. I mean, he was ridiculous when he was playing.
Yeah,
8.5 attempts a game, 44% from three, and this year not that much of a drop off. 37%, 7.5 attempts per game, and he's doing a lot of off the dribble scoring. I think he's one of the best shooters. The other guy, also a senior, he's a bit more of a comeback story who I haven't really seen him talked about on draft boards, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. I get like the whole heart thing, but Keyonte Johnson, I mean, he played one game in Florida in the what was it, 2021 or 2020? I can't remember, but before collapsing, he only played a couple games, and he really hasn't left off from where he was. Like, I think he's a big reason why Kansas State's so good. His jumper is really good, and then on top of that, why I think he sticks, even though he's older, he's got one of the best first steps. He might have the best first step in the class of non-elite prospects.
mm-hmm.
And that combination of great shooting and the ability to just go to the basket when teams close out, I think he's going to stick. But those are my two choices. I don't know which one's better, honestly, but I think they're two guys worth shouting out.
Yeah, I was actually shocked to see Sasser's 3-point percentage where it's at, because it was low for a long time. He was below 30% for a while. And I even had somebody mention to me, like, all right, his shooting numbers his sophomore year were, I don't remember the numbers, but then it was a big jump as a junior, and then it was low again, at least, until like the beginning of January. And they were like, all right, which is the real him? Like, is he the guy that shot lights out last year, but it was a smaller sample size? And they were just kind of wondering, like, if he's not a lights out shooter, then what is his best NBA role? And then as far as Keyonte Johnson, I mean, it's a great story, like a great story. A lot of people thought, I mean, they were blaming COVID, so many different things. He transfers. I mean, his first year coach at Kansas State, they beat Kansas. I mean, it's like a movie. It's like really like a movie. I'm rooting for him. I mean, I hope whatever conditions that led to him collapsing are past him, and I hope it's not a situation to where, he's red flagged and teams are fearful, because that goes. I mean, it happens. I mean, we saw it with Butler, who everybody thought was going to go high. I don't even know where he's playing at right now, but yeah, I'm definitely rooting for Keyonte Johnson. All right, there's a player I want to get your opinion on, Chris Murray. What are your thoughts on Chris?
I keep it with the Big Ten. I feel like we've talked about him or about the Big Ten so much. I don't know. I really don't. I didn't buy his 3-point shooting last year. I think I don't know if I was just too obsessed with that low free throw percentage. I honestly haven't seen a ton of him this year. I've seen 2 games, and I think in both games he was non-existent. Like, I know one of them was, I think it was the TCU game where it was the worst game of his year, and I can't even remember what the other one was. So I'm a little bit indifferent. I think just looking at the numbers, it's something I could buy into. He's improved a lot. What does it look like, as teams kind of hone in on him as a shooter? We'll see. So I'm a little bit skeptical. I apologize. It's probably the one player that I've done the least amount of homework on, I feel like, in this entire draft. But
he's not sexy. He's not a guy that you just turn on the film and say, oh, yeah, I can't wait to watch Chris Murray play.
Whereas Keegan, I feel like I think I watched every single game he played last year. So I saw a lot of Chris
because it was new.
Yep.
Like right now, you're looking at, and you might be like, we've seen this before. It's just they shoot with different hands, a little bit different players. I get it. Because with Chris, last year when I watched this film, I'm like, okay, this guy, can he shoot? No, yes, no, yes. And then it's like, oh, wow, he shot 38% or something like that. But he's extremely streaky. Like he may miss 6 in a row, and then he may have 2 games where he's like 5 of 7, 4 for 5, and then he may have a game where he's like 1 for 6. But then the numbers when they even out, it's very respectable, like 37, 38% from 3. I just think that in the NBA, he's going to be a good value pick late in the draft, maybe even second round, which you can say is like, is he that much different than his brother? And that 1 year of age is going to be a 20 pick difference at the minimum. It could be 25 picks difference. I mean, what, Keegan went 4th? I mean, does Chris go 20th, 25th, 30th, whatever? So it's definitely going to be very, very interesting. Well, that wraps up this episode. Big shout out to Richard for sharing his thoughts on the shooters in this draft class. And thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your next listen, you must check out the Game to Game podcast. Every moment, every top performance, every result, Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. To follow the Game to Game on the Locked On NBA channel, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. It is late and I am tongue-tied, but once again, it's Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman, and we are out.